Hey, this is Matt Miller. You listen to me every day, I hope, on the Tape podcast with Paul Sweeney. I've got a new podcast, though, that I'm running alongside the Tape with my friend Hannah Elliott. She's the car reviewer from Bloomberg Pursuits. We call it Hot Pursuit, and we tell you everything you need to know or want to know about new cars, about the automotive industry, about car events. I'm going to drop a little sample from the Hot Pursuit podcast here. Take a listen. If you like it, go to the Hot Pursuit page and subscribe. You can find it on Apple, on Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. I'm Matt Miller.
I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, we have a fantastic podcast for you today. We're going to touch on Formula One, give you the update on the Ferraris we were talking about last week. But we also have a special guest, a recurring guest, Barry Ritholtz. He is the host of Masters in Business, probably our most popular podcast on the Bloomberg platform. And he has a new podcast called At the Money.
At the Money. Yep. ATM.
Plus, obviously, the founder of Ritholtz Wealth Management, and he's a contributor to Bloomberg a lot. So, Hannah, we're going to talk about Formula One because you're preparing to go to Las Vegas. We're also going to talk about hybrids. I think they're the way forward. You think it's a Band-Aid. There's a lot more sort of econo boxes and grocery getters that I think are really cool, though, in this space. And then we're going to get to Audis. You just recently drove the SQ8 e-tron.
That's correct.
And Barry has an R8. The first car I bought was an Audi and A4 Avant.
Those have become very collectible now.
And mine was a 2.5 TDI, which I loved
with
so much.
Stick shift? Or?
Yes, obviously.
Yeah, those have become desirable.
All right, let's kick it off, though, with Formula One, because I guess, you're getting ready to head out to Sin City, and what do you expect?
It's going to be very interesting because when Formula One and Liberty Media, which owns Formula One, entered into this deal with the city of Las Vegas to host the race, it seemed like a home run, like a match made in heaven. I mean, it's Vegas, which of course is sort of the party center of the world right now, and has a bunch of great professional sports teams. We've got hockey, we've got NFL, we're going to get some baseball.
The Bellagio, Wynn Resorts, the Sphere.
Oh, let's not forget the Sphere. There's so much there, and the food's great, all of this stuff. There's Jean-Georges restaurants. But the thing is, and Formula One's been doing great in the U.S., but in the past month or so, it's been really weird because ticket prices have been dropping. Both ticket prices for general entry into the Grand Prix, hotel room rates have been dropping, and it's kind of creating this feeling that maybe Vegas bit off more than it can chew. It's possible organizers sort of got a little bit too greedy with how they price things, and people are just not having it.
That's crazy. So if I decided, I am going to go see Formula One this weekend and skip the birth of my second daughter, you think I could get tickets?
Oh, you'd have no problem getting tickets. Now, I will say you might pay like $600 or $700 a night for a hotel room at the Venetian, but that's pretty typical. And it's actually far less than you would have paid had you tried to get a room a month ago or 2 months ago. So this is an expensive sport and an expensive city. But compared to what prices were listed at a month or 2 months ago, you're going to get a deal, and there's plenty of tickets to go around. There are plenty of flights from LA to Vegas.
So Barry, would you go?
The problem with Formula One is, you're in a corner, you're watching the cars go by. It's not, I know it's very visceral and very exciting for a few moments.
That's the best part.
But then you're there for another 4 hours, and it's a sport that's so great on television. It's very comfortable. You really can see stuff. Everyone should go do it once. I don't know if I need to do this in Vegas. And the thing I'm wondering about, how much of this is specific to Las Vegas and how much of this is just, hey, the economy is moving along, inflation is coming down, but we're starting to slow down. When you look at what's going on with auction prices of used cars, 911s, Ferraris, whatever, or even watches, everything seems that had run up in 20 and 21 and 22. It's all softening. I wonder if this is a broader macro concern.
I think that's a really interesting point. And we talked about this Ferrari last week this Ferrari 250 GTO that was going to go on sale. And to your point, Barry, yes, it sold this week for almost $52 million, but that was actually far less than RM Sotheby's had hoped to get for the car. And they were saying, in excess of 60 million. The hammer price on that Ferrari was actually 47. So yes, this is a very expensive car, but relative to where it was supposed to be, quote unquote, it's really down. And to your point, Barry, I think this YOLO economy is over.
Yeah, we saw this week, Bloomberg put out a story, prices for Rolex and Patek Philippe watches, the ultra luxury, super high-end watches on the Bloomberg Subdial Index have come crashing down. They were off 1.8% last month to the lowest level since 2021. Do you think that's the problem with F1, or is the sport too boring? The engines aren't big enough. No one passes.
Here's a problem. Max Verstappen. That's a problem. He wins all the time. He's already clinched the title. He's won like 17 of the last 20 races. It's pretty predictable at this point. Even second place is pretty predictable. And the other thing, to Barry's point about the TV viewership, this race starts at 10 p.m. Pacific time, which means you're going to have to be a diehard fan.
Whoa.
To watch it.
It really is 1 a.m. East Coast time. I did not know that.
There are not many people who are going to be up at 1 a.m. in New York, I don't think, to watch this race.
You can always watch it the next day on the replays.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of MotoGP, as you know, because it's a far better sport. I mean, there's a lot of passing. There's a lot more strategy. You have tons of different winners. And I just have a subscription to MotoGP.com, and then I watch it after the race is over, because it was inevitably in Indonesia, and then it doesn't come on until, like 8 in the morning on a Sunday. I'm not up at that point. I think it could be a bunch of different factors, from an economy that's slowing down to Max Verstappen winning every time. But are we still going to see, is Brad Pitt going to go? Is Puff Daddy going to go? Are all the celebrities going to be there and having $15,000 dinners?
Yes, I think so. Maybe more interesting than Brad Pitt, David Beckham will be there. I don't know if you've seen the latest Beckham.
There's nothing more interesting than Brad Pitt.
Yeah, I thought it was so good. I'm a big Victoria Beckham fan after that. But yeah, Shaq will be there. There will be celebrities there. It's going to be fun no matter what. How can you not have fun in Las Vegas? And I will say organizers are saying that they're expecting record revenue. Regardless of anything, they're on track to, quote unquote, sell out of tickets. This is what they're telling us. So it's still going to be great. It's going to be great fun. Anyone who's going should really pack their coats, though. It's going to be pretty cold.
In Las Vegas?
10 o'clock in the desert in November is cold.
True. Desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to Vegas and you can't have fun, you're not doing it right.
Right.
Do you like Vegas, Barry?
No, I can't stand it.
But, for a couple nights with...
yeah, if I have to. There's great restaurants, there's great shows, but not my first choice of destination. When they finally nuke that part of Nevada, and the whole area is just silicon glass, it'll be fine.
I went to Lamborghini driving school there.
That's a different story.
That was awesome.
You can rent a World War II Spitfire and go up with a pilot. That's worth doing. And Vegas is the only place that'll let you sign off and say, sure, I'll take my life in my hands in a 80-year-old World War II plane. Let's go.
I'd like to shoot an Uzi in the desert.
Right. Go.
Vegas.
Yeah,
sign up.
Vegas, that all counts as Vegas, though. So
yeah, I guess.
Vegas is a lot more than just the Strip.
Totally
even
agree.
Driving out to the Hoover Dam's really cool. And I do think sort of dusty hotels where Elvis played and Sinatra are really cool. There's amazing off-roading out there. All of that, to me, counts as quote unquote Vegas. When I go,
100%.
And there's fabulous shopping too.
I 100% agree.
All right, so I'm going to change.
I don't go to casinos at all.
No.
I don't hang out on the Strip.
No.
I don't gamble.
No.
That's the part of Vegas I hate. Everything around that is really interesting.
Fun.
Yeah, you want to wake up married to somebody you have no idea her last name, Apologies to my wife.
Your pregnant wife, your
yes.
very pregnant
Let's
wife.
move
all
on
fans.
and her favorite car is the Volvo XC90 T8, which is a hybrid.
Smart woman.
You can go 20 miles or more on the battery alone. And so for doing things around town, dropping kids off at school, going to the grocery store, no problem. And then you can go on longer trips because it has a gas engine that kicks in. It's beautiful design. I have to agree with her on that.
Especially that interior.
And Barry, you sent me and Hannah an email this morning about a Toyota Camry that's only going to be sold in hybrid.
Right. They're giving up the gas only. Listen, the crazy thing about Toyota is they have this massive lead in hybrid technology, and we're waiting for what they're going to do next. And, they kind of let Tesla eat their lunch. But what Toyota is telling us is the immediate future, the next decade, is going to be hybrid.
And obviously, Tesla doesn't have any hybrid vehicles. They're fully electric. That annoys me because I can never find a place to charge. And I like to have a little moto vibes. Hannah, you don't think that hybrids are the way forward, though?
I am not a fan of hybrids just because I tend to be a purist. I want to go all in, all or nothing. And I love of course, the quick performance of electric vehicles. And I love my own personal internal combustion cars. So hybrids have always seemed to me to just be like halfway, but nowhere, anywhere. Who cares if, Toyota was making a Prius, because also BMW was making the i8. And
well, I love the i8. Dude, the i8 and the i3 to me were when I first understood why it's cool to have a range extender motor, right? Because they were fully electric vehicles, but they just had a little, I think it was a 1.3 liter three-cylinder as like a utility pack. It's like bringing along a backpack. It's like being a prepper. You always have an option if you need it.
My wife's Panamera hybrid, we drove to Connecticut this weekend. We got nearly 40 miles a gallon on the way there. We exhausted most of the electric for that range. But when you drop your right foot, you still have over 500 horsepower. And that car really goes when you want it to go. So to me, it's the best of both worlds. Almost 40 miles a gallon on a 100-mile trip into the woods in Connecticut, and somewhat less on the way home without any electric.
I always say there's no replacement for displacement, but I think batteries might be that replacement. I'm driving right now a Kia Sorento PHEV. And aside from all the other stuff that's impressive about it, and there's a ton of stuff, it's got a locking center diff. It's got this really cool technology where when you put your turn signal on in your center display, you can see your blind spot.
And in fact, all of the Hyundai Kias do that. You signal right and it shows up in your
That's
right.
Awesome.
And you signal left and it shows up in your left dial. That should be a standard technology across the whole industry.
In any luxury automotive.
Okay, well, but for a Kia, I think it's really cool. I mean, for a Kia, it's got torque vectoring all-wheel drive. That's not something you expect when you're buying a Korean car. But I thought the engine was more substantial than it was when I first started driving it. I hadn't read the specs. I popped open the hood, and I saw it's got a 1.6-liter inline four. Like, that's a tiny little motor, but it still has 260 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque for, $50,000 for the fully loaded, like most luxurious edition. That's pretty peppy.
It's a lot of truck for the money. And look, the way every one of these new manufacturers that are trying to gain traction or expand their footprint find an audience is by offering a lot of value for the money. Think back to the way Honda did this 40 years ago, or the way Toyota did it 60 years ago.
So, Hannah, do you ever drive like a Kia? Because I always think, you're the one who's constantly in a Cullinan. But do you ever drive like a Korean car?
This is true. Typically, no. I will openly say we do not cover typically Kia at Bloomberg Pursuits. However, I did recently drive the Kia EV9, which is their big electric SUV.
I want to try that.
I really, really liked it. I was surprised at how beautiful and well thought out it was. I actually really would love to go visit the factory in South Korea. I'm going to try to do that next year because Kia is really making a play to elevate themselves so that they could potentially have shoppers cross-shopping between like Volvo or Land Rover into Kia or even Audi. And I don't think that's out of the question. Based on what I've seen, we joke about it, like typically I wouldn't cover it, but the limited amount of Kia products that I have seen and driven, I actually am pretty impressed by it. And let's not forget, this is a company that also makes Genesis.
I was about to bring that up. Kia is
Yeah.
owned by Hyundai. Genesis is their version of Lexus versus
They know what
Toyota.
they're doing. They know what they're doing. One question, though. Do you read the new Kia logo as 9-inch nails?
I love the way it reminds me of 9-inch nails.
That's
100%.
hilarious.
Everywhere.
I'm on board with that. And by the way, I think that the new logo really helped them transition their brand a little bit from being kind of a bargain basement, Korean econobox to being something that people really would cross shop with a Range Rover. I mean, the Telluride is a beautiful car. I don't love the powertrain, but the logo, I think, helps a lot. It looks really cool.
I agree.
I'm with you.
It's an attitude of beautiful hospitality. And I know that sounds like a PR line, but it actually is true that some of their vehicles really have this beautiful sense of a welcome environment.
I wish they'd throw in a V8 once in a while. They need to make a big halo car.
There are no more V8s coming out, and they're certainly not coming out of Asia.
For mass production, I just think they need to make a halo car so that people can then feel okay buying the lower end models.
That is so old school marketing. That's just not how it's done. We're going to give you a lot of car or truck for the money. Yes, it's only a V6, but you can tow, you could stick 6 people in the car, you could load it up with luggage, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. That's the value proposition for these cars versus the cars that we really have grown up loving, the BMWs, the Mercedes, the much bigger and more expensive cars.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, if Audi had never made the Quattro and won races with it, if they had never made the R8 that everybody drools over in 50 Shades of Grey, I don't know that we'd be buying, the Q3 either. And by the way, speaking of that, both of you have a connection to Audi because, Hannah, you are test driving some version of their e-tron. Barry, you, of course, have the R8. But, Hannah, first tell us about the EV that you drove.
Okay, so yesterday I drove the SQ8 e-tron, which is basically it's sort of a higher performance version of the Q8, which is a 5-passenger SUV. It's all electric, starts at about $90,000. And it was beautiful. Audi has been a little bit behind when it comes to offering electric vehicles, and they're trying to make up for lost time. And so anything with e-tron at the end is their electric offering. The SQ8, despite its confusing name, was really nice. It was beautifully appointed inside. It was as quiet, actually proven by Audi, as quiet as an A8 sedan. Really nice, balanced. It's heavy. It's like a 6,000-pound SUV, so you do feel that a bit.
Some people like it heavy.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
Not if you have to make a turn.
Judgment. There's no judgment.
I like a big, heavy cruiser.
We love that. We love that. And this did feel really nicely insulated and solid. And I actually have a friend who's been looking for an electric SUV, and I instantly messaged her and said, I think you're really going to love it.
It's a good-looking truck.
I drove also the Q8 e-tron, not the S version, but I'll say that I was disappointed that they used the Q8 moniker because I think the Q8 is one of the best designs Audi has come out with in at least a decade. It's a head turner whenever I see a real Q8 on the road. And the e-tron version is not a real Q8. It doesn't look as cool. It's more invisible. Like you can easily overlook the e-tron version. Whereas the full-fat gas Q8, it's so hulking and muscular that you can't overlook it. But it is definitely solid. That's the word I would use for it. Like, it is a product that you feel like is over-engineered and is not going to break down. What do you think, Barry, about Audis? I mean, you have obviously the Halo car, but what do you think about the brand and the other vehicles?
It's full-time all-wheel drive, and if you're in the part of the country where you're very much dealing with weather or you're off-road, they're great for that. They're notoriously expensive to repair. They're not the lowest cost maintenance. Comparatively, you buy a Honda or Toyota, you put gas and occasionally oil into it, you're good for a bajillion miles. The German cars tend to be a little more finicky. My experience with Audis and BMWs, you have to build a little bit of a repair buffer, especially if you're looking for a 30,000-mile car like I know you're hunting for.
Yep.
They're not terrible. It's not, you speak to people with, British cars or even some of the older Ferraris, and you're writing big checks to your mechanic. But they're great cars. They're well designed. They hold up well. And I know lots of people who have Q5s with, 200,000 miles on them.
Well, I think I have to say just a little bit. I think that German engineering has a pretty good track record of reliability. And it's a little unfair to compare them to British and Italian engineering.
Agreed. I've never had a problem. I had an Audi for a long time, never had a problem with it.
If you have a repair, it'll cost you.
I had a Mercedes for a long time, never had a problem with it.
My SL was bulletproof until you had to replace the coils, you had to do something, and it's not an inexpensive repair. Just brace yourself.
I'm sensing that Barry will always choose the practical option, the very solid, practical. You don't
like the R8. It's totally practical. Like the M6 convertible manual, the most practical.
No,
GT
I don't think so, dude. He has a C2, and he bought a 911 that he sent to be converted into an EV.
Well,
I'm in the middle of that. That's a fun project.
These are not cheap cars.
But they are if you're buying them 25 years old. That's why I say you have to have a reasonable repair.
You do have to set aside a budget. So by the way, I wanted as. Longtime listeners will know, I really wanted to get BMW 760 to replace my wife's Volvo, and she has basically said, no way, Jose. But she is willing to get an X5, and so I want the M50 with the twin-turbo V8 and the ZF transmission. I was looking at Savage Geese on YouTube, and they have a review of it, and they were like, listen, if something goes wrong with any of the air suspenders on each corner, $1,800.
That happened with my brother, and it was much more than that on his 7 Series.
If something goes wrong with the transmission, you're looking at a $5,000 repair. If something goes wrong with the engine, obviously rebuild. But they're not cheap to fix. So if you're buying a used one, the guy from Savage Geese said, set aside $10,000.
That's exactly right.
Or buy yourself more substantial extended warranty.
Now that said, I've had 2 Series, I've had 3 Series, I've had an X4. Bulletproof, never need repairs, absolutely spectacular cars. But, for example, I had a fuel injection issue with the M6. I kept getting an idiot light. It would reset itself, and it was one of those quirky little things that were hard to pin down. Ultimately, it was BMW who figured out what it was. Not a cheap repair.
Barry,
that was my only repair I've had on that car in 10 years.
What was, and I want to know from Hannah too, what was the first car you ever bought with your own money?
A Chrysler, 1967 Chrysler 300, cost me $100 from my uncle. Had it for about a month. My mom totaled it.
Nice though, 300.
Yep. Trip the tires at any speed. You're doing 50 miles an hour, step on the gas, and off you go.
They've just come out with the last year of the Chrysler 300C with a 6.4 liter Hemi in it, which I'm pretty excited.
End of the Hemi line
to drive. Right Hannah, what was the first car you ever bought?
That was a 69 Buick Skylark that I paid also $100 for. I split it with my sister. We bought it from a church lady who charged us $200. And I was deeply embarrassed of it and sold my half to my sister as quickly as I could.
No.
Yep.
But what a cool car.
It was absolutely cool. She was far more advanced in her thinking about design and history than I was at the time. I was so embarrassed of that car. But she loved it.
I think I just Googled it. Look at this, Barry. What a cool car.
Olive green, black interior, beautiful steering wheel.
Not the highlight of American automobile manufacturing.
Dude, I think it's awesome. I would like to have one of those today. My first car ever, because my dear late grandmother, bless her soul, gave me $10,000 when I graduated from college. And I put it on a down payment for an Audi A4 Avant. In the year 2000. I was living in Frankfurt at the time, so I got to drive it on the Autobahn. It had a 2.5 liter TDI, so it was diesel, but it had 180 horsepower and it's pretty light, so it really got moving. I could do like top speed 220 in kilometers per hour, so that's like 130 miles per hour. And I did that.
College age when you're doing?
Well, I was a little older. I was like 25.
And those diesels run forever also. Those are 300,000 mile cars.
Yeah, that was a great vehicle.
What happened to that car, Matt?
I had to sell it when I moved to London a few years later because of because the British drive on the wrong side of the road. So it wouldn't have made sense. And also, I think I was broke after a few years and needed the money. That does it for this episode. Barry, thank you so much for joining us. Real pleasure to have you. I just want to point out that anyone who wants to follow me at Matt Miller 1973 on Instagram can do so. Matt Miller 1973.
My Instagram is Hannah Elliott XO. I will not be sharing my birth year with anybody who asks, and it's rude of you to ask. And you can also find me on Bloomberg.com and sometimes on the radio with Matt and sometimes with Barry.
Follow me on Twitter at Ritholtz for as long as Twitter hangs on by its fingernails. It's doing a full Friendster. We're circling the drain. We'll see what the new year brings.
I guess that's it for Hot Pursuit. You can catch more at the same time, same place next week. I'm Matt Miller.
I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.